Hey, babe. I'm happy to be back in the chair.
I'm glad you're here too. Last week I was all alone recording the show.
I'm so sorry. Man,
Yeah.
It was such a weird week coming off of our conference at our church and then going to jury duty and actually being on a trial.
Yeah.
That was really weird.
And how did that go for you?
It was 2 days, one of those days being 12 hours, and a very, very interesting experience.
Today's word is stupendous.
You need some encouragement.
We really love listening to you guys.
You need some inspiration.
Love your podcast. Wonderfully inspiring as I think about my marriage.
Stupendous marriage encouragement.
You're listening to the Stupendous Marriage Show.
Hey there, I'm Stu Gray.
Hey, I'm Lisa Gray.
This is the Stupendous Marriage Show. We love hearing from you and answering your marriage questions at on-air at stupendousmarriage.com. You can send them to us whenever, wherever you'd like. And you can also send us a voicemail, 615-592-1060. We would love to hear from you and feature you on an upcoming podcast too. So tell me more about jury duty and what you learned.
Honestly, when I signed up, when I got the notification, I had very mixed emotions. I was like, how cool, like such a privilege to be able to go and do something like that. And then, oh man, like that's so inconvenient, you know? So I tried to pick a 2-week window in which I thought it would be the easiest to do. And that was last week and this week. And you're kind of on call. So you have to call the night before and they tell you whether to show up. Monday night I called and I had to show up. And I was like, what? Like, what happens now? And so I showed up on Tuesday, and it was such an interesting process. Now, you did jury duty a couple years ago, and yours was kind of different.
Well, I mean, it was kind of similar, but I almost got through my whole 2-week period without having to do anything at all.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And it was like the very last couple days, I think, if I remember it right. But, you know, mine was just a 1-day trial. And I also was not wise enough to get off of the jury. Didn't figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, mine was pretty simple. And mine was not like a big decision. It was a deciding if they were actually going to go to real trial decision.
That's right.
So I don't know if they do this. I mean, I don't know if our county's different or if it's the same across the states or in other places, how, you know, our county does, you know, that window of time and then you call. And I don't know if that's the same in different states and cities and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really, again, had no idea. I had never been summoned before. So, well, when we went in, I think the things that I thought were really interesting, especially after the fact, I look back on it because we were there 2 full days and it was a criminal court case. And it was an auto theft between an employer and employee type situation. And looking back now, I feel like there were a lot of things that I learned about marriage in the jury room.
Ooh, do explain.
Well, so we get done with literally almost 2 full days of testimonies. We get done like 4 o'clock on Wednesday and we have to go deliberate. And I'm like, what does that mean? You know, we have 12 people. I don't know any of them previous to this situation.
Right.
And we go back in a room and basically they come in and tell us, hey, I know we're getting started late, but we really need you guys to come to a conclusion tonight and just stay as long as you want. We'll feed you dinner, you know, whatever you need to do.
So deliberating pretty much means yelling at one another, right? So that was marriage? Is that what you were talking about?
No, actually, I am very glad to say that pretty much everybody on the jury was very gracious and kind.
That's not like marriage.
That is not always like marriage, but there were so many things in it. How you talk to each other, how you acknowledge each other. You definitely talked over people, right? So people were like, well, I think this and I think that, but no, that's not, no, it should be this way. And then there were times where we were all able to realize, wait a minute, let's gather and discuss as much information as we can so that we can make a good decision. Right or wrong, guilty or not guilty, we wanted to know that we were making a decision that we felt was the wisest. And something really shifted in the room when we did the first blind vote. I made the suggestion that we actually write down our votes initially, guilty, not guilty, on pieces of paper so that nobody felt pressured to vote a different way. And we had 6 guilty, 5 non-guilty, and 1 undecided. That was our first vote. I will say I was not guilty. I did not feel like the prosecution had proven their case enough that I could vote guilty. So we start talking. And within the next hour and a half, some of the perspectives that were shared changed people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
And it went from being 6 guilty, 1 undecided, to 3 guilty and 9 not guilty.
So pretty much what you're saying is you're pretty persuasive. Which is also like marriage.
Yes. Well,
The wife pretty much can, change the atmosphere. The decision of the husband. Is that what you're saying? Is that something you learned?
No.
I'm still trying to follow along.
I know. No, honestly, because it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me talking, but it was multiple people sharing their points of views. Like, hey, like I pointed out to everybody, guys, we have to remember that first and foremost, he is innocent until proven guilty. Have they proven him guilty? Do you feel like beyond a reasonable doubt they have proved him guilty?
Whew, in our culture, that's tough anymore. Man. I think everybody gets on trial with social media culture. I think everybody gets out there and starts pointing the finger really fast and saying everybody's guilty before they're, you know what I mean? That's really changed in our culture a lot.
Well, and there were several pieces. I guess the things that I learned the most is it's really important to make a wise decision because that was the goal, right? We all wanted to make a wise decision no matter what that was.
I think that's a brilliant point. In any relationship, I thought what you said right at the beginning, there was right and there was wrong, but then what's the wise decision? What's the right overall thing? It's not who's right and who's wrong. It's what is the best decision going forward? What is the right way forward? It's that third decision that we're trying to go for instead of who's right, who's wrong. And a lot of times we fight about who's right and wrong instead of looking for that right path together.
Well, absolutely. And there was one juror who just could not comprehend why anybody could possibly vote guilty. And he got really upset at times. And I had to actually calm him down because I'm like, whoa, everybody in the room had a right to an opinion, right? That's the whole point of a jury. There's 12 people there who all have their own perception of what they heard, what they saw. We talked about the characters of the people, whether or not we believe they were a person of good character or a person who would be the type to lie. Mm-hmm. Everybody was talking about body language, like the defendant got really hot-headed at one point in time. It's funny because that didn't bother me, him being hot-headed, because the attorney was actually really like jumping on him. It bothered other people. Other people were like, I can't believe he got hot-headed like that. So it's so funny what our perceptions are. We were all different people from different parts of the world as far as our area and occupations. And I believe the same thing happens in our marriage. We come into a situation and we see something going on, whether it's with our kids or with our spouse or with our work, and we just see it differently. It doesn't mean we're horrible people or that we're both wrong or somebody's right and wrong. You just see things differently.
We bring life experience to each moment of our life. And so you can see something completely different than I see. I mean, that's why we both go to the doctor visits together. When I go to the doctor and you go to the doctor, we all go. Both of us go. You're like, oh, what did you hear the doctor say? I don't know. What did you hear the doctor say? So we get different perspectives, even though the same thing was said by the doctor.
Right.
It's not your way or my way. It's like, oh, what did you hear? And we kind of piece that together going, it's so funny how that works. So when you only have one perspective, your perspective, the right perspective, and someone else comes into that, it's very easily bumped up against, and you have to be willing to be humble and listen and hold your perspective loosely.
Right. And that is really, I felt like we were a successful jury in that sense. Everybody in the room, except for one person, everybody in the room was very open to hear what the other people have to say. And that was very helpful. Again, I had no experience of this before. So if we'd gotten a couple of jerks in there or people who are super hot-headed, oh my gosh, like it would have been horrendous. But we were very fortunate that overall the group was really open to, oh, wow, I didn't think about that perspective. And somebody else would share a perspective and go, well, I don't know if I agree with that part, but this part that you said was kind of interesting. And everybody's goal was to make a wise decision at the end. And I think if we started to do that in our marriage conversations, whether it be who's picking up the kids, how to pay the bills, when are we going to have intimacy in our marriage, whatever the conversation is, if we were to take it kind of away from us personally and go, hey, let's work together to make a wise decision, I think it would really benefit our marriages.
Yeah, what's the best way forward, not just the way that I want or the way that you want, what works for us moving forward? What is the best path to take, the way of wisdom, the third way, above the two people? You know what I mean? Because we create this new thing when we come together. We're supposed to become one flesh. That's what the Bible says. So there is this thing that we create that is a new thing that is not just me, it is not just you, it is us. And how do we, marriage couple, move forward together, and not just my way, not just your way, but the best way for both of us? And that just takes negotiation and yelling and screaming and you're right and I'm wrong. And
I like that. Well, I'm right.
Who's on trial here today? So you're saying how successful and fabulous and wonderful the conversation was, all this sort of stuff. What'd you end up with?
Well, after deliberating for 5 hours, yes, I didn't even realize it'd been 5 hours. We actually had 11 not guilty and 1 guilty. And the most interesting thing that I thought really applied to marriage is the one juror who really felt there was no way he could vote other than guilty was very open to hear every possible perspective that might sway him. We even asked the judge a question, and the judge had us come back in the courtroom with all the attorneys and everything to answer that question, a clarification of a definition of a word, in hopes of it swaying him. I mean, he literally wanted to be given something that would cause his mind to change. At the end of the day, it did not. He could not, with a good conscience, vote not guilty. He just felt like with everything that he had seen and everything he had heard through his filters that the man was guilty. And no one shamed him for that. And I was shocked. I mean, literally one lady on the jury said, I'm really impressed with you that you would stand your ground like you have. That's, wow, I don't know if I would be able to do that. That's really cool. And several other people said, yeah, we're not trying to sway you. Like, we would like to not be a hung jury, which is what they call it when you can't come to a verdict. But at the same time, that's not as important as it is each one of us to leave this room and know in our good conscience we made the best choice. That's what ended up happening is we had to go into the judge and say, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but we cannot come to a decision as a jury. And we are a hung jury. And the judge said, I understand. And they actually said it was a mistrial. So I was kind of bummed at that part. But at the same time, there were really neat things. I mean, continuing to respect your spouse when you don't agree with them. Their mind is set on this situation and the fact that they're right in that situation or what they think is right in that situation. And you are on the other side. At the end of the day, unless it's something that's life-threatening to you or somebody else, it doesn't really matter where the bowls go in the dishwasher. And the funny thing is, in marriage, we do that. We pick these fights about really insignificant things like that, and we're like going to go to our grave fighting over that. And it's like, what if you just say, you know what? Let's just agree to disagree. Like, this is not that important. You think this, I think that. At the end of the day, we love each other. We're going to move past this and not sit there and let this be something that pulls us down.
Well, I think I'm such a people pleaser person that talking about that last juror guy who stuck to his guns, but he was willing to hear all different perspectives. There's a lot of that in there that I'm not good at. Like hearing different perspectives when I'm upset or having a problem, I'm very unwilling to listen to another side. So learning from that, I think, is important for me. It's like, well, when my mind is set, I'm set, but he seemed to be different. You know what I mean? He wanted to hear, he wanted to be able to change. He knew where the other votes were, so he was willing, but he still couldn't come around to changing his mind. Not that he was right or wrong, but he was willing to listen. And I think I have an issue with that because once my mind is set, it's like, well, I mean, this is what we're going to do. So, I mean, I think that's good. But then sticking to your guns on the other side of it, I'm easily swayed. It's like, well, I don't really feel strongly about this or about that. Where do you want to go to dinner? Well, I don't care. Well, what do you want to do? So I've got this wishy-washiness that's like, well, I'm cool with that. It's fine. I am, I don't know, a B- on the personality scales. You know what I mean? I might even be a high C+. It's like, yeah, whatever. I'm not an A. I'm not a type A. So it's like when I have an opinion about something, it's pretty strong because most of the time it's like, well, whatever. It's all good. And so I don't know, being strong in a decision, I think is a cool thing to think about too. It's like, okay, this is what I think about something. This is why I care about it. This is what it is. But I can't do that with every item in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Well, and I know for me, being on the other side of being in a marriage with you, you are so easygoing. And I appreciate that 9 times out of 10. I kind of don't know what to do with you when you're not. When you get your mindset on something, it kind of like, whoa, what just happened? Like, this is important to him and we're arguing over this thing. And why are we arguing? We don't argue about this kind of stuff because you usually agree.
Right.
For me, it's also hard to adapt because you kind of get used to the way your spouse is, if they're easygoing, if they're type A. So I know there's been times for me, I'm a type A generally, and when I just come home some days and I want to make no decision, you're like, what do you mean you don't want to make a decision? You always make decisions, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, not today. Today, I'm just kind of wiped and I have no more decisions in my brain. And that can cause conflict if we're not careful.
That puts me on high alert in my brain because I'm like, oh, God, I got to make a decision. I didn't want to. Oh, no, I don't know.
Exactly. And that's the funny thing. I think in marriage, it's really easy to put your spouse in a box and say that they're always one way. And I think it's very good to always remember they're not, that they can change minute to minute, day to day, and that you got to love them anyways.
I am glad you're back. I'm glad the jury is done and we learned some fabulous and wonderful things, or at least you did, from being on jury.
Yes, I did. I'm very thankful I was able to serve. It is truly an honor. So
we'd love to hear from you on air at stupendousmarriage.com. Send us your email if you've got a question about marriage. We'd love to feature you on an upcoming podcast. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye.